Hello students, welcome to the lecture on Business Strategies for Sustainable Development. And after the lecture, we will be able to learn the following objectives. Discuss the sustainability as a business strategy, explain the implications for business risk and practical considerations, describe the enhancing management system, explain the management leadership, discuss small business and private company considerations. Let's start with a brief introduction of business strategies for sustainable development. Business sustainability can be described as a holistic, continuous improvement process that includes the sound management of people and the environment. Business sustainability makes good business sense because the benefits feed directly back into the bottom line. True sustainability must be integrated into all operations of business, from policy and management through on-ground activities such as purchasing, production, and distribution. Sustainable development for Shell means balancing short and long-term interests in a way that allows us to integrate economic, environmental, and social considerations into the business decisions. Sustainable development is a core part of this strategy. Governments, communities, customers, industry, and non-governmental organizations each play a role in building a sustainable energy future. Let us now take a look at sustainability as a business strategy. Sustainable development entails constant adaptation to changing circumstances, both risks and opportunities, in communities, institutions, markets, and, of course, the global environment. Specifically, it requires a perpetual and sophisticated recollaboration of how well we, as an organization, produce an internal good profitability while we aim toward the creation of more and better public goods, such as healthy ecosystems, thriving societies, stable nations, and productive economies. Catalyzing broader progress on sustainable development. An increasing number of companies, financial institutions, and investors are looking to IFC for leadership on sustainability. The challenge ahead is for IFC to continue innovating in ways that help the private sector realize the many opportunities that sustainability offers their business. Among the vehicles fostering this evolution is the UN Global Compact, under which thousands of companies worldwide have come together in support of basic principles on human rights, labor, the environment, and anti-corruption. Toward better sustainability performance. International Finance Corporation, IFC, is undertaking a comprehensive overhaul of the environmental and social safeguard policies and guidelines that have guided work on sustainability since 1998 and have constituted the minimum standards that IFC clients must satisfy to access our funding. New approach to sustainability will be to establish performance standards that build on minimum expectations by providing clients with a solid framework to manage business risks and promote consistent improvements in their sustainability performance. Here we will discuss about the implications for business risk. Business risk involves the possibility of financial and operational difficulties in the business environment. Different types of business risk exist in the economic market. Each risk carries different implications for business owners to overcome. Business risk can also result from overall economic conditions. Strategic. Strategic business risk occurs from the amount of competition in the economic market. Increasing competition can create lower market share and fewer profits for a company. Economic resources are the raw materials, labor, and other items companies need to produce goods or services. Compliance. Business owners must constantly review regulations and develop business policies or procedures to ensure their company is in compliance. Small businesses may need to spend more capital and resources on changing operations to comply with new regulations. Financial. Financial risk involves losing money from consumer sales or facing strict credit requirements. Business owners may sell inventory or other items to consumers at reduced prices in an attempt to make money to pay business expenses. Operational. Operational business risk is the possibility a company will face deteriorating situations in their production process. Companies can also face increases and financial risks if they must continually spend money to repair or correct operational issues. Let's now take a look at the practical considerations. Sustainable development is a concept that is not amenable to simple and universal definition. It is fluid and changes over time in response to increased information and society's evolving priorities. To some, sustainable development and environmental stewardship are synonymous. In the short term, sound environmental performance is probably a reasonable objective for most businesses, with sustainable development as a longer-term goal. Positive signs of change. This positive change in attitudes and practices is echoed by the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, which says there is now a realistic prospect of harmonizing environmental and economic considerations, and thus of gradually incorporating these objectives in policy. Let's now take a look at how to enhance the management system. The concept of sustainable development needs to be incorporated into the policies and processes of a business if it is to follow sustainable development principles. The two main areas of the management system that must be changed are those concerned with a greater accountability to non-traditional stakeholders, continuous improvement of reporting practices. The concept of sustainable development must be integrated both into business planning and into management information and control systems. Senior management must provide reports that measure performance against these strategies. Perform a stakeholder analysis. A stakeholder analysis is required in order to identify all the parties that are directly or indirectly affected by the enterprise's operations. It sets out the issues, concerns, and information needs of the stakeholders with respect to the organization's sustainable development activities. Developing a meaningful approach to stakeholder analysis is a vital aspect of this management system, and one of the key differences between sustainable and conventional management practices. The stakeholder analysis begins by identifying the various groups affected by the business's activities. These include shareholders, creditors, regulators, employees, customers, suppliers, and the community in which the enterprise operates. Set sustainable development policies and objectives. The objective is to articulate the basic values that the enterprise expects its employees to follow with respect to sustainable development, and to set targets for operating performance. Senior management is responsible for formulating a sustainable development policy for its organization and for establishing specific objectives. Establishing measurable objectives is essential if management and others are to be able to assess whether their business activities have met the established objectives. An effective external monitoring system is necessary for directors and senior management in order to ensure that sustainable development policies, objectives, and management systems are appropriate for the complex and rapidly changing world in which their business operates. Design and execute an implementation plan. Translating sustainable development policies into operational terms is a major undertaking that will affect the entire organization. It involves changing the corporate culture and employee attitudes, defining responsibilities and accountability, and establishing organizational structures, information reporting systems, and operational practices. Business planning processes should be modified to reflect the sustainable development priorities, the expanded stakeholder consultation process, and external monitoring needs. Management information systems should be enhanced in order to ensure that management and employees receive the information they need to assess their performance against the objectives. Financial planning should consider the capital requirements for process changes, as well as possible tax incentives and the financial effect of new mechanisms such as credits for waste recovery. Develop a supportive corporate culture. In the process of implementing sustainable development or environmental management policies, many companies have experienced a kind of organizational renewal. The concept of sustainable development requires organizations to develop a culture that emphasizes employee participation, continuous learning, and improvement. Internal reporting systems can have a significant effect on corporate culture. Develop measures and standards of performance. The implementation of sustainable development objectives and the preparation of meaningful reports on performance requires appropriate means of measuring performance. Management control, as well as external reporting, depends in part on the availability of timely information about company operations. This is needed in order to allow management to assess performance against external and internal performance standards using appropriate performance measures. The measures used to assess and report on performance will be influenced by the company's sustainable development objectives and by standards that have been established by government and other public agencies. There is a significant opportunity for the business sector to work with governments in establishing performance measures and standards, and help develop reporting and monitoring systems that are cost-effective and which meet the needs of both the public and business. Prepare reports. The next step in the process is to develop meaningful reports for internal management and stakeholders, outlining the enterprise's sustainable development objectives and comparing performance against them. It is important to narrow the gap between the way economic activity is measured and the way in which the use of natural resource is evaluated. For example, financial statements do not illustrate the degree to which an enterprise invests in pollution control and conserves resources. Internally, several companies now ask their line managers to include in their regular reporting procedures a statement on whether they have achieved the environmental and sustainable development targets. Similarly, the board of directors should receive periodic reports from senior management on whether these objectives have been achieved. External reporting on sustainable development issues can take a number of different formats. Some organizations are experimenting with special reports for particular stakeholder groups, such as employees. Enhance internal monitoring processes. On an ongoing basis, it will be important to develop mechanisms to help directors and senior managers ensure that the sustainable development policies are being implemented. Performance monitoring is well established as an important element of the management process. Organizing internal environmental audits is a practical way to monitor the implementation of management policies. These normally require multidisciplinary teams of experts, for example, engineers, auditors, and scientists who possess the necessary knowledge and experience both in auditing and in the areas being audited. Here we will discuss about management leadership. Establishing sustainable development objectives, systems, and monitoring mechanisms require leadership on the part of senior management and a commitment to continuous improvement. Role of the board. Without the active involvement of the board of directors, it will be difficult for an organization to implement sustainable business practices. It is important that corporate sustainable development policies be implemented consistently throughout an organization. The board also has a role in monitoring the implementation of its policies. It should receive regular reports on how the policies are implemented and should be accountable to its stakeholders on the company's performance against these policies. Self-assessment. This process should compare the company's current performance with the expectations of the stakeholders. Management philosophies and systems should be reviewed. The scope of public disclosures on sustainability topics should be analyzed, and the ability of current information systems to produce the required data should be evaluated. Deciding on a strategy. Management should then consider ways to narrow the gap between the current state of the corporation's performance and its objectives for the future. A strategy will need to be developed, outlining where the company hopes to position itself relative to its competitors and its stakeholders' expectations. A general plan is needed to describe how and when management expects to achieve that goal, together with the various milestones it will reach along the way. Strategy implementation. Once the strategy and the general plan have been approved, detailed plans should be prepared indicating how the new strategy will affect operations, management systems, information systems, and reporting. These should set out measurable goals to be achieved in each area and explain how progress will be monitored. They should also specify spending and training requirements. Now we shall understand the small business and private company considerations. Small businesses can find much of the expertise they require through industry associations, chambers of commerce, and corporate environmental groups. There is also a growing body of literature, some of which deals with the experiences of companies that have integrated sustainable development into their operations. These cooperative ventures could be more complex and include formal industry program dealing with matters such as performance standards, monitoring and technological research. Different types of sustainability services. Sustainability services are those that provide planning and benchmarking, communications and reporting, assessment, training, and possibly certification to companies. These services focus on how that company can maximize its potential for the long-term maintenance of the Earth's well-being, which has environmental, economic, and social dimensions. Communication of the corporate sustainability plan, the benchmarks the company is trying to meet, and the processes to be used to make these objectives is the next step of sustainability services. During this phase, the company must communicate with its employees in order to educate them about how implementing these objectives will better steward the environment in an economic and socially responsible manner. Training is an integral part of sustainability service. It is important for employees to learn the reason for implementing each change initiated by the corporate sustainability plan. Creating a sustainable economic development strategy. The premise behind the creation of a sustainable economic development strategy is that a more orderly response to this inevitable transformation can be proactively organized and managed, and that this will lead to significant and widespread economic benefits. Sustainable economic development strategies are guided by a local, regional leadership structure and a consultation team collaborating in partnership through a series of 5 distinct phases of work. Leadership structure. A leadership group, which is usually a pre-existing local regional organization that has committed to lead the effort. A decision-making council made up of the key leaders from a variety of different organizations who are guiding the creation and implementation of the sustainable economic development strategy. Consultation team. Sustainable economic development consultation teams are headed by one or more generalists with extensive professional experience in sustainable economic development. With sustainable economic development strategy consultations outside of the U.S., consultations team include both global and local sustainable economic development experts. Phases of work. A strategic assessment and opportunity analysis of the area-wide economy to identify its current direction, its strengths and weaknesses, and the opportunities and challenges for sustainable economic development. Design of a sustainable economic development strategy that builds on the momentum that already exists, establishes a specific focus, and weaves together a set of initiatives and actions to create a clear, coherent, and easily understood and dynamic strategy with a strong business model. SWOT's keys to business strategies. The SWOT, SWOT analysis is an extremely useful tool for understanding and decision making for all sorts of situations in business and organizations. SWOT is an acronym for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. The SWOT analysis headings provide a good framework for reviewing strategy, position, and direction of a company or business proposition, or any other idea. Use SWOT analysis for business planning, strategic planning, competitor evaluation, marketing, business and product development, and research reports. Strengths and weaknesses. The strengths and weaknesses are essentially internal to the organization and relate to matters concerning resources, programs, and organizations in key areas. Threats and opportunities. The marketplace, which may be altering due to economic or social factors, customers, distribution channels, economic factors, social demographic issues, political and environmental factors. Competition, which may be creating new threats or opportunities. New technologies, which may be causing fundamental changes in products, processes, etc. Develop business strategies. Once the SWOT review is complete, the future strategy may be readily apparent, or, as is more likely the case, a series of strategies or combinations of tactics will suggest themselves. Use the SWOTs to help identify possible strategies such as build on strengths, resolve weaknesses, exploit opportunities, avoid threats. Now, in the end, let us summarize what we have learned in this lecture. Sustainable development for Shell means balancing short and long-term interests in a way that allows us to integrate economic, environmental, and social considerations into the business decisions. The role of business in contributing to sustainable development remains indefinite. The global economy is coming under growing pressure to pay for the restoration of damaged environments. The stakeholder analysis begins by identifying the various groups affected by the business's activities. It is important that the sustainable development objectives be clear, concise, and, whenever possible, expressed in measurable terms. Management control, as well as external reporting, depends in part on the availability of timely information about the company.